All right, I know y'all have been waiting with bated breath for this episode because I have been. It's such an amazing day here at Alumni on Air, which is our video podcast that we have for Teach for America Memphis. Where we bring alums into the TFA Memphis office and sometimes on location, if you caught the last one, to hear about their stories and what they're doing, how they got here, how they got involved with TFA, how they got to Memphis, and how they lived out their vision in one day. And I have an amazing guest for you all today, somebody that you're going to just love. I mean, literally, the energy, the positivity is just, it's like a piece of sweet potato pie. Like, I love it. It's really great. I actually like apple pie a lot better, though, but still. So I was like,
sweet potato.
You know what? It's both of them are really good. And I hope you say the whole entire time because it's going to be a slice of pie. How about that?
Love that.
All right. Well, before we get into it, I am Dr. Jamisha Hayes. I'm the Managing Director of Alumni and Programming. And I love doing this to hear the stories of our alums, but I would not be able to do this without my counterpart who's behind the scenes, who's making everything happen, dealing with all the tech issues and everything else, the Director of Communications and Alumni, James Larkin. So thank you, James, for all that you do. You are amazing, and you just keep everything happening and going. And so, without further ado, I like to have introduce our guest. So tell us your name and what corps you were.
Yeah, so my name is Nick Tilley. So I'm a 2021 corps member here in Memphis.
Oh my goodness. Now, Nick, I always ask this question.
Yeah.
What is the history behind your name? Is there any kind of thing when they said, like, we're going to be Nick, your parents said you're going to be Nick?
Yeah.
What happened? How did that come about?
So I actually have no idea what is the story behind my name. So my brother is named Zach, I'm named Nick, and both of our names are spelled a little bit differently than how they would traditionally be spelled. So not an N-I-C-H, it's an N-I-C-K-O-L-A-S, and my brother is similarly with a K. So nothing too crazy behind the origin of the name, but just a little twist, a little bit of uniqueness that my family threw into it.
And I think they were speaking something into existence because you are definitely a little twist of something unique and great and good, and so that was really good. I think they set you up for success.
You know, they knew that I was going to be a little bit different than everybody else and a little bit more unique. And so I love that my name had that little twist in it. But yeah.
I do too. So tell me about, so 2021.
Yeah.
That's a huge commitment to make during that time.
It really was.
So tell me let's back up before 2021. So that means you applied about 2020.
So I was I think around September 2020 is when I applied. So I started school. I grew up in East Tennessee, and I actually stuck around in East Tennessee to go to college. I went to college at the University of Tennessee. And so when I arrived at the University of Tennessee, I had no idea what I wanted to study. And so I took a variety of classes in my first couple of years and ultimately landed on public relations. I felt like communications, planning, just public speaking, a lot of different elements of public relations really appealed to me and communications in general. And so I went through the program, got my major in public relations, my minor in business administration, and I actually graduated a semester early. So I graduated it was December of 2020, and it was a really crazy time in the world. We had transitioned to remote learning due to the pandemic. I think it was March of 2019, and so the entirety of my final semester was actually fully remote. And so I started looking for jobs around August of that year, and I'll just be honest, I had a really concrete vision of what I wanted next. I knew that I wanted to do something either in the arts, communications, arts administration, or something athletics related. And my target was set on New York City. And so I know I had applied for, no lie, probably 200 jobs during that time in the New York City area that were, like I said, aligned with arts administration and athletics interests that I had. Both of those I'd kind of dabbled in when I was in college, working with our theater on campus, as well as the men's basketball team at the University of Tennessee. And it was, like I said, a weird time in the world there weren't a ton of jobs that were being posted due to the pandemic, and many of those jobs that were being posted were going to people that were sometimes 20-year veterans in their career field that were applying for an entry-level job to ensure that they had work during that time because they had been laid off. And so I kind of felt like in a lot of ways I was spinning my wheels in August of 2020 to find the next right opportunity, or any opportunity for that matter for me. And so I'd always really loved working with children, and a couple of mentors and people that spoke most into me growing up were my teachers. And I, on multiple occasions, had people tell me, you should be a teacher. And I was like, I am not going to be a teacher. And that was the one thing that I was resolute in during that time. But person after person just kept telling me that. And it wasn't until the fall of 2020 that I'd even heard of Teach for America transparently, because, like I said, I was in East Tennessee, and here years later I know that the city served in Tennessee or Chattanooga and Nashville and Memphis, and so it just wasn't a concept with which I was very familiar. And I honestly thought, Jamisha, that I'm going to apply to Teach for America so that I have a safety. Wow. So that I have a backup in place, so that I don't reach the spring and still continue to turn my wheels.
Yes.
And I continued to run down several different opportunities over the course of the next few months, and got close to some, really, really close, got offers from some. And the week that I found out that I was accepted into TFA, I also had another offer that I had been extended that week, and another offer that I anticipated being extended later in the week. One was in California, one was in Rhode Island, one was in Memphis, and the other two were far more aligned with what I was seeking in a career path. There was just something in my mind about this sixth grade math position this middle school math position in Memphis, Tennessee. And I'll pause just for a second. A thing that kind of motivated me for TFA was, like I said, I always had the sights set on New York, the big city, wanting to chase that as the kid that, was from East Tennessee. I've TFA existed in New York. I, in all honesty, thought I'll rank order my preferences, put that high on the list, and that can kind of be a jumping off path, and I can serve the next 2 years and enjoy that and go from there. And I remember looking through the 50 cities, at that time 50 regions, that Memphis was one of them. And I remember laughing out loud and going, oh my gosh, they have it in Memphis, Tennessee. And I remember going, I'm not going to Memphis, Tennessee. I told my family that when I completed the application. Like I said, as having grown up here in Tennessee, I had traveled to Memphis one time in the first 21 years of my life. Wow. And by the time that I ranked my preferences, lo and behold, Memphis was number one actually on the list for me. And so, when I got the 3 offers, it was very clear for me that though it was not aligned with everything up to that point in my life, that I was going to go to Memphis, Tennessee for the next 2 years to teach 6th to 8th grade math at a school to be determined. But kind of crazy.
I love that, and I love how you just kind of allowed yourself to fall into the process. Like, you had a plan, so you definitely had that type A in you, but you also allowed yourself to be type B and say, whatever happens, I'm still going to lean into it. Yeah. That's a really good skill to have as a teacher, because you have, and as a leader, honestly, because you always have a plan of what you want to do. Yeah. But then life happens, things happen.
Rarely does the plan end up happening exactly as you thought it was going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so when I committed to come to Memphis, and was just kind of buckle up to see what would happen that spring. So I still had that spring that I stuck around in East Tennessee, spent that time and got my ducks in a row to move, and I came to Memphis then around mid-June of 2021. Crazy.
Wow. And so tell me about your summer training experience. For my day, when I did the course, we called it Institute. Yeah. Now it's called pre-service. And so for you, what was your 2021 experience like for your summer training?
Yeah, I think just how I as a job candidate and I as any human person in the United States at that time was having to adapt, and what they did, that TFA was similarly having to adapt as they were trying to navigate the challenges of the pandemic. And what I really appreciated was the constant responsiveness is how I would describe it in TFA during that time. It began for me in May, before I even moved to Memphis. We began onboarding, and our some of our requirements we completed virtually and in modules before we came. And then as we transitioned to Memphis, we had Zoom calls that we participated in, as well as our summer learning experiences. So I spent the summer learning institute that summer an American Way, and I got to work with, it was kind of a mixture of grades, but primarily around 5th grade-ish, 4th, 5th, 6th grade math students at American Way that summer. And so it was similarly an interesting time at summer learning in that our classrooms had maybe 5 kids in them, of families were, hesitant to send their student back to school full-time for very good reason. And so it was very interesting, the experience that I got to have that summer, and it wasn't a massive group. It was a small group environment that I got to work in, which I really appreciated, and also got to bounce back and forth between a couple of different classrooms, which I would similarly say was probably unique to that summer experience.
As a person who had to plan it, it was unique.
Yeah.
As the person who had to lead it, it was unique. And I will reveal myself and say that was, I had a plan, I had a vision of what I want to be true. And I definitely had to adapt as the leader of our summer training program. But what I loved about your group is that y'all were willing to step in and rock and roll with the punches, and y'all actually forged a partnership with Memphis Shelby County Schools that we had never been able to have before. And so I'm really excited and thankful to the 2021s because of that, because we got to get into what became a multi-year partnership in the summer school and the summer school program for Memphis Shelby County Schools. So thank y'all for being trailblazers and being troopers to go through that. I appreciated the fact that we were kind of the first that got to approach it in that format. And I think that, we learned a lot from it, and I think the TFA, like I said, the constant responsiveness is how I would describe the experience that I had that summer. The TFA's probably been able to take that, and in the years since then use that to adapt the experience of incoming corps members. So I really, really enjoyed the summer experience. And I enjoyed y'all. Y'all were y'all were a fun group. A lot of energy. A lot of energy. Yeah. I'm thinking back to it, and I appreciated it because I needed it, because it was definitely a lot of sleepless nights planning. And so, for you, once you finished your summer training, then what happened? Where'd you go? What was the situation?
Yeah, so just like stepping back to like my school selection, I would love to talk a little bit about that. Since I was earlier in the process, I think if there were around 5 application cycles, I think I was around 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. And so I was in that period of time that I was afforded the opportunity to interview and speak with a lot of different schools. And I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. And it really allowed me to find the school that was the right fit for my one day, or for what I was wanting to seek in my experience. And something that was like a massive part of my journey growing up were extracurriculars, and spanning very different directions of, I loved music and involvement there with choir and things like that. And I also loved soccer. And so having athletics and having music extracurriculars being such a massive part of my life growing up, it was extremely important to me that I sought an opportunity. If I was going to go teach 6th grade math, something to me that was new, that I was able to join it with 2 things that were very near and dear to my heart, where I felt I could be impactful and try and use that as a catalyst for other students. And so as I met with schools, one of the first questions that I asked were, I would love to start a music, after we got through everything academic related, to be clear, I would love to start a musical theater program at the school that I go to. Like, do y'all have anything like that? Would you be open to such an idea? I thought it was interesting, just like a small aside here. Every school that I asked that question to was very interested in starting such a program. So like the first aside that I would give here is, if you have a bold idea, you have something you want to pitch, schools are going to hear you out on it. You can figure out the funding. You can figure out all of that side of things later. Yeah. Pitch the bold idea. They're usually going to take you up on it. And regardless of who it was that I pitched that to at that time, SCS, or if that was, a charter, everybody was interested in that idea. I will tell you that I was fortunate enough to interview with several schools and to receive several offers. And the one that ultimately I took was, I was very intentional in the selection. It was the one that I felt best aligned with my mission, my vision, and my beliefs. And I remember getting a valuable piece of information from one of my professors when I was in college that I have held on to this day, and it was never work for an organization if you don't believe in them and what they do. And I tried to use that as a guide for me of every single one of these schools that I met with was doing great work.
Right.
At the end of the day, the school that I selected was the one that I felt most aligned with what I was wanting to do in the next 2 years. And so it just so happened that our principal at that time, executive director now, had a big background in theater. And so our executive director at that time was similarly on board with such an idea. And so we jumped into that with 2 feet. And so I selected my school for that reason. So I knew going in that I would have the opportunity to direct theater in their enrichment block, and their structure of the school day poured into that, as well as teaching the subject, or the grade rather, that I was most interested in. And that was 6th to 8th grade. And I actually was originally hired for 8th and ended up moving back and doing 6th in that first year. And I'm so very glad that I did, with that being the first grade that we have at our school. But
Oh my goodness. And I love that idea of you saying, wait, I'm going to do something great. I'm going to do something new, but I got to bring some of me in. I got to make sure I pull some of my authenticity, my truth, my experiences, and give it opportunity to kids. And that's something I see core members and alum doing all the time that I think really leads to everybody excelling and growing. Because when you think about founding something, I was a founding cheer coach in my school. I did the same thing. I got to my school and I was like, yeah, I love teaching social studies, and I taught 7th grade social studies. But I said, what really impacted me and set me up for success was being able to be a cheerleader and not just lead. I was able to turn that experience into something to help me pay through college. And so I was able to become a coach in college and all. So I was like, so I looked at it as an entrepreneurial effort. And so when I was a coach, I told my cheerleaders, I said, you are going to cheer, but you're also going to lead. And part of being a leader could be an entrepreneur, which is having your own consulting, our own thing. And so I taught them how to do the skills, but also how to teach others. So when they got in college, they could also do that and go and give back also, which is what I did. I gave back to my neighborhood and became the cheer coach for one of the schools in my neighborhood. And so I really love that. I really encourage other people to pull that in, and don't forget it. Now, it is taxing, it's tiring.
100%.
It is.
I'll be the first to say it. It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not.
But
But you also find a different level of strength and wind beneath your wings, because you're doing something you love on top of seeing your kids in a different light. It's one thing to see them when they're when you're like in the classroom. It's another to see them in another experience, another setting. Because it's just you'll be surprised. The kid that has no energy, that doesn't talk at all, they're the ones that in that extracurricular activity are the shining star.
I agree. And it morphed in from, okay, we finished that first show, like, are we going to do a second show in the spring? And I remember approaching our principal at that time and being like, okay, I'm also interested in coaching soccer. Like, we can do another musical in the spring, or I can coach soccer in the spring. And he was like, I remember we discussed it literally just passing in the hall one day. And he goes, how about we do soccer in the spring? We'll do a musical next fall. I was like, okay, let's do that. And so kind of adopted that structure of doing musical in the fall and soccer in the spring and math during the school day. And yeah, that was kind of how everything got started at our school, or for me at our school, I should say.
I love this. So we get through the first year. This is your first year this year.
That's my first year.
And it was my first year too as well. So, and let me say this. You are there. I would see, go back to your name and the power of your name and being unique and a twist. That is definitely, you added a twist on education. You added a twist on this experience, and you added a twist to that school environment where you came in. You could have been a traditional teacher and just said, I'm going to teach and I'm going to go home. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you had to add that extra flavor that I think allowed that school to be enriched. But you also did your first year, which is very unique. So that's the extra twist. Because it's one thing doing your second year or even your third year, but you're learning to teach along with learning to lead some type of program. That's a really unique skill. How did you manage that?
I'll just say also, like, that I think a lot of school administrators are very hesitant to let a teacher, especially a first-year teacher, do such a thing in the first year. And I think that's a fair reservation in many circumstances to have. I think the flip side of it is this, that for a teacher to be fully invested in the school, that it oftentimes takes something that they are passionate about. It could be something in the arts, it could be something in athletics, that then is going to give them, as you said, that extra boost, momentum during the school day. You know, in that first year for us, our school day went until 4:30. We had an extended school day, and so we did musical theater each day after school. We did everything. We made the costumes with the kids. We made the props with the kids. And then we performed it in our gym in around that December. In the spring for soccer, we similarly had still an extended school day, and then practice would go on a little bit after that. And those kids that did musical theater with us that fall, many of them had never done such a thing before. So not only were we, starting a program at our school, but we were creating an opportunity many of them had not previously had. And then during the spring, it was the first season that they had soccer in literally years due to COVID. And so they were getting back out on the field for the first time. And I can tell you, I have learned more from that season than probably anything else in my life. I remember we had 50 of our about 150 middle school boys try out for soccer that spring. And I thought, we might be onto something here. And that first year, we were a sight to behold. We did not have uniforms that matched. We had reversible jerseys. We had basketball jerseys. We had track jerseys. We had blue socks. We had blue jeans. We had it all. Like, we were a sight everywhere that we went that year. And we were in a unique situation. We didn't have a home field, as many schools here in Memphis don't have a home field. You have to use a shared field, or you have to play all your games away. And so we are, starting a program first year after COVID, and we are trying to teach kids the fundamentals of playing the game, also doing it in a structured environment, and then adding the element of we don't have a field, we don't really have a ton of equipment, and trying to figure out all of that as I went, with me being a first-year coach here in Memphis, Tennessee. And so I can tell you that of the entirety of my core experience, that I probably learned more from that spring coaching middle school boys soccer than just about anything else. And I can tell you, I also loved my classroom experience. And I think something that our school does so well, I don't know that I ever even named that I accepted the role at Memphis Rise Academy, we have instructional we have directors of curriculum instruction in our building, as well as coaches in our building that were just constantly pouring into me, that allowed me to be successful. And so I was afforded those opportunities because of how much support and how much support that I was given during the school day to go in and to teach my classes, and then to do that after school. And was it a lot? Yeah, but it was manageable because of the support of our administrators that we had. It's very unique. And then we get to the end of that first year, and my kids, I think they were number 3 or number 4, I think, in terms of 6th grade classrooms in the city of Memphis in their math scores. Wow. And so it wasn't that, I was having to, drop the ball in one place to pick it up in the other. I think the support that I received in our building holistically allowed me to be not only successful as an educator, but also to be able to provide these other opportunities to kids for the first time. And that was year 1. It was a very busy, very exhausting, but 10 out of 10 year 1 for me.
10 out of 10. And so did year 2 rise up to that occasion?
Oh my gosh.
Or surpass
I continued to try and push myself in the classroom and in theater and on the field as well. And so our boys that past spring, they were actually the runner-up for the middle school championship here in Memphis. We were so proud of them back in that spring of 2022. But, like I said, we wanted to push ourselves everywhere the next year. Right. So our students continued to perform at that same high bar in math. In theater that fall, we were like, okay, we did kind of an in-the-round production the first year. We want to partner with a production company and bring other area schools in to watch the show, so that their kids can also have access to the arts. Right. So we reached out to our friends across the street at Beacon as well as Aurora, and we were like, hey, bring your kids to watch the show. We would love to have that. So we did a matinee afternoon performance that year and invited their schools in to join us. And then that spring, we went undefeated and won the Memphis and the West Tennessee Championship for soccer.
Oh my goodness.
And so we just continued to try and push our kids, and they were always willing to step up. And I just want to pause of we talked about a lot of really cool opportunities that I was fortunate enough to get to be a part of in the first year. And I want to emphasize that, to be a part of. They were the ones that made it all successful.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had a musical theater program if these 20 kids weren't like, hey, I'll show up, I'll do this, X, Y, and Z. We wouldn't have had a soccer team if we wouldn't have had kids show up and be committed. And so I was just fortunate enough to be a part of it and to get to see it all happen around me, is how I would describe it, because I was just as much in the middle of the madness as they were.
I love that, and I think the middle of the madness is sometimes when you get to really get to greatness.
Yeah.
That's where creativity, innovation, that's when you get to fail forward and really get to the point of figuring out what is the sauce. And you think about when you're cooking, sometimes you have a recipe and you know how to do it, but you got to add a little bit of something. You got to take something out to make sure that it really fits what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think as I, reflected on all of that, as year 2 wound to a close for me, and my commitment was winding down. Like I said, going back to the beginning of the conversation, I never thought that I would come to Memphis, Tennessee. And moreover, I never thought that I would be in Memphis, Tennessee for more than 2 years.
And that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
So we get to the end of year 2, and you could have went back to New York or went back home. And why did you stay in Memphis? What made you say I have to stay here?
I will say that our school and the kids were the biggest thing that encouraged me to stay here in Memphis. I'll be honest, I was torn around that December of my second year of not honestly knowing what I wanted to do next, because even with this awesome experience that I'd had so far at a school that I could not have asked for a better placement at, was honestly just didn't know what was next for me professionally, developmentally, everything. And so it just so happened that there was an opening at our school that spring. Our director of external operations and our athletic director was going on to a new opportunity that he had been afforded in his hometown. And so I remember thinking this could be a fit for me. And lo and behold, I was fortunate enough to be afforded the opportunity. And so in July of 2023, I transitioned out of the classroom into my title at that time was External Operations Manager and Middle and High School Athletic Director. And there was a lot of drinking through a fire hose that happened in the coming weeks and months. And I still sit in that role now titled Director of External Operations and Middle and High School Athletic Director 2 years later, and couldn't have asked for a better experience. I, in a similar way that I never saw myself transitioning into the classroom and being a teacher when I was in those college years, I didn't really see myself in becoming an athletic director or school administrator in a way that those 2 years of my core experience, I think, propelled me into that opportunity. I got to see how the arts and I got to see how athletics in the environment in which I got to work got to help me be the most effective and impactful version of myself, that it then encouraged me to how can we do this on a larger scale for the entirety of our school. And so I jumped into the 2 feet.
And I love this constant thought of you jumping in and taking the risk and trying something. And I bet there were some moments where you fell and you didn't get everything that you wanted to have happen, or it didn't go the way that you had planned. How did you persevere through those challenges? how did you keep yourself going?
You have to lean into the successes. You are 100% right that there were so many things in that first year that, like, number one, I didn't know, or number two, I thought would go one way but could not have gone more in the other direction. And there are still just as many of those things, if not more, that I don't know in year two and that go the other direction here in year two. But I think leaning into the successes of that year really worked to continue to drive me. I'll give you an example. I said that when we started at our school, we didn't have a soccer field.
Right.
We subsequently took steps over the course of those next 2 years to adopt and to renovate and to maintain a soccer field that our kids and that our families could call home. And over the course of the past 2 years, between our girls and our boys, middle school and high school, we played 50 games a year on those fields that we get to see our families now have a place to come out and to celebrate their kids. I think if you separated our teams, middle school, high school, boys and girls, when I first started, that we had, I think, around 13 teams. I think we have 24 now of just new opportunities that we've worked to put in front of families in the past couple of years through partnerships with organizations like Tennis Memphis to get our kids access to free tennis programming, to add volleyball at our school for middle school and for high school, and to bring in coaches that are equally dedicated to the hard work that we put before them has allowed our athletics department to grow and to flourish. And are we winning every game every night? Absolutely not. We're not out there bringing home the state championships, I'll be honest. But when we see the growth that has happened and the opportunities that we are creating, that's what's most important. I always frame it to our administrators, to our kids, to our coaches is this. Our goal is to use athletics to create better human people. We want to use athletics to teach responsibility, ambition, excellence, commitment, honesty, and use that to then transfer over to life and how that can help them. And we want to develop them as athletes by putting the best coaches in front of them that will allow them to develop. And so, again, I enjoy winning a great deal. I think I'd be a pretty bad athletic director if I sat here and told you I didn't enjoy winning.
Right.
But I look at what is the most important to me. It is that we are using athletics, as we hopefully are every extracurricular in our building, to teach students valuable lessons that are going to help them be the most effective, most impactful members of society, and that we are similarly working hard to develop them, and the wins will come in time.
They will. As
a result of doing those things. That might be 5 years down the road, it might be 10 years down the road, but I believe firmly that you have to invest. Middle school, can't wait till they get to high school. Middle school and high school, elementary if your school has a school, but we only have a middle school, of teaching them those foundations, those principles, so that as they grow into high school, you can have sustained success.
Yes.
And so we're not there yet. I'll be the first to say we're not, but we hope to be in time by pouring into kids in these ways.
Love it, love it, love it. And when you were talking about your vision for your athletic program and the connection to using athletics to help them be better human beings and be successful in life, it really brought me back to when we joined the Corps as Teach for America Corps members. We're all aligned on one thing, which is our vision of one day. We all are striving to do this work so that one day all kids have access to excellent education. And what I loved about TFA and what I still love and why I still work here is that I realize when you teach and when you do the work in community, you realize that it is a multifaceted way to get to one day. Kids can't just do it academically. They need other things like the programs you created. And that means, and they might need help. They might need legal assets. They might need somebody that's a politician. They might need all those people, actually all the things that are part of society working together so they can get access to that excellent education. I have to ask you, what is your vision of one day, and are you currently living it?
I can tell you that it's such a hard question. And when I come back to like what ultimately led me to TFA, I talked about this in the microcosm of our school, and what led me to select our school is that I believed in our school. I believed in the programmings it offered and the vision of our school and the people that led our school.
Mm-hmm.
It's ultimately what led me to Teach for America to start with, was my alignment with this vision of one day all children will have the opportunity for an excellent education. And when I think about all of the things I've talked about today, I know it can seem a little counterintuitive that a core member has sat here and talked primarily about extracurriculars and the impact it can have on one's educational experience. But I can tell you, Jamisha, that we see the impact of athletics on a student's academic experience daily. Yeah. The kids will show up to school, I kid you not, because they have a game on that day when they might not have previously. And it's okay, how can we tap into that to help them be successful in the classroom? Anecdotally, we had a young man who's really struggled at our school. Academically, he had a 0.3 GPA in the last 9 weeks. And we thought, how can we use athletics to help motivate him? A 2.3 in the most recent quarter. His highest of his entire time at our school. Is soccer the magic sauce that's helped him do that? I'm not going to say that's the only thing, because he has a massive network of wraparound people that are helping and supporting him in that. But we're able to use that as a motivator. And I think for me that we have to work to leverage what's important to kids to help them be successful in the classroom. So when I think about my one day, it's not the nicest facilities. It's not even the state championships. It is that we are providing as many children with the best experience that they can, athletically, extracurricularly, that will then subsequently motivate them to be successful in the school day, in the classroom. Because at the end of the day, as much as I sit here and talk about everything else to you, academics is paramount in front of mind for me. And it is, how do we use these other things to motivate them and help them be successful? They're never going to step out on a soccer field, a basketball court, a track, a tennis court with us if they are not academically where they need to be. And so it's, how can we motivate them? Because I can tell you this, I think that it is, and I don't mean to sound counterintuitive when I say this, teachers get so wrapped up in making sure that their lesson is the most thoroughly thought out each day, that they sit up the night before and they want to make sure that they know that objective inside out. And that is extremely important. Do not get me wrong. But children are going to learn from someone from whom they relate and they know that cares about them. That cares about them beyond the work that's on the paper. That cares about them as a human. That is willing to show up for them. That's invested in their development. And what all these other things today that I've talked about allow you to do is to show that individual how much you care about them. We have to meet kids where they are. If we want them to be successful in the building, we have to meet them where they are. We have to figure out what they're interested in. We have to invest in them if we want them to then be successful there. So, to answer what is the one day for me, that we are providing the best possible opportunity for kids in an environment that they know that they are supported, and we are leveraging those things that are important to them to help them be successful academically. And I think that I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like for me. I don't sit here, thinking that, I'm going to be an athletic director for the rest of my life, or that I'm going to, be doing X, Y, and Z for the rest of my life. And that's only a portion of my job now. The other side of my job allows me to work with Title I and making sure that we are informing families of the rights that they have, and all of those other things that are so very important to a school being successful. I mean, the business functions at school as well. And I don't know exactly what the next step is for me. I'm trying to figure it out, but I think that it will be grounded in leveraging what's important for kids to help them be successful. All kids.
I love that. So as we're wrapping up, what would you say is your number one advice for people coming to the core and core members currently in the core?
I think for core members that are coming to the core is love this city. I can tell you that, as I talked about at the beginning, and as someone that grew up in Tennessee, that Memphis is looked at a certain way by certain Tennesseans, by certain people in the country. I sit here 4 years later, Lord have mercy, 4 years later, and I love this city.
Yes.
This is an awesome place with so much potential for you to come in with the vision that you have and to run with it.
Yes.
And so I would say, first and foremost, is love this city. Set aside what you think you know about this city. Set aside what someone else has told you, good or bad. Form your opinion of the city, and I guarantee you, you will love this city.
Yes.
I would also say that when you come in, expect to work and to pour your everything into it. Because I think you can come in and expect to work, but if you're not finding what you love to motivate you during the day, there's a big difference between working hard and loving what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say identify what it is that is important for you. Maybe at your school, it's starting a girls in STEM program.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at another school, it's starting a small band or orchestra program. I don't know. But I was fortunate enough that every time I came forward with a crazy idea, that the people for whom I worked and still do work were willing to hear me out on it, because they kept front of mind what was best for our kids. And so find the school, whatever that school is, that is going to support the vision that you have, that's going to provide an opportunity for a kid, that's simultaneously going to act as a motivator for you, that is going to propel you to be the best educator that you can be during the day. You can walk and chew gum. You can provide the opportunity you want to create for children and be the best possible educator that you can be. And in large part, I think that you have to find that thing if you want to be that educator.
This is true. I love it. And I hope y'all soaked all that up. If you didn't, slow it back down, rewind it, watch it again.
Talk fast, I know.
Watch it again. No, it's perfect. But I want you to watch it again and watch it again, because that is the secret sauce to success as a board member. Now, what about alumni? So your fellow alums, what would be your advice to them? What would be your call to action if you have one?
I think what's really cool is I go through LinkedIn or I speak with a fellow alum is seeing the really cool things that they are doing now.
Yeah.
Of our corps, and every corps that I'm fortunate enough to know and work with here in Memphis is such a diverse corps with so many different skills, different backgrounds, different things that are important to them. What I have named today are the things that motivate Nick, are the things that are important to Nick. Things that motivate Jamisha or James or whomever are going to be different.
Yes.
But I can assure you that there is a group of kids that needs what you have to do, or need that you have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And so as an alum, it might continue to be in the classroom. We now more than ever need educators that are willing to continuously pour in children and show up for them. At the same time, you might be able to take that experience from the classroom and the interest that you have to go start that nonprofit, to, after you've done your day job, start that after school program for kids. And so I think for me, like the call to the alum that are doing such awesome things now, some are in law school, some are going to school to be a doctor. My closest friend from this past year that just completed his core commitment is going to school right now to be a doctor, is figure out how you can use what you have learned in your commitment to continue making an impact, regardless of if that is in education. There are plenty of ways that you can continue to invest in children and in your community, regardless of the career pathway in which you ultimately go. And so I think that it's not placing your core commitment on a shelf. It is using it in whatever way that you possibly can over the next however many years of your career to continue to make a difference.
I love that. I couldn't have said it more perfectly or more poignantly, or just honestly, that was such an invigorating and refreshing call in, because I do think that oftentimes we forget that whatever your dream is, a lot of us who are core members, we typically, that wasn't our first thing. I definitely said I didn't want to teach. I told people I was not going to teach. That was not the thing. And then you get in there and you fall in love with education, and it was okay. I taught like you did multiple years after my core experience. And then I just kind of kept falling in love and falling into different spaces. But one thing that I always have in the back of my mind is, what was that dream you had before you joined the Corps? Can you pull that experience and go back to that and pull those two things together? And I want to lean into what you said and say and double down on it. If you're a Corps member or an alum and you had a thought, you had a vision, you had a dream, what you're doing right now is great. And if there's something else you want to do, lean into that, pull into that. Don't put that Corps experience on the shelf, because I'm betting everything you did in the Corps is going to set you up for success in the next thing. But make sure you lean into it and you own it. And oh my gosh, Nick, how you've been today, make sure you do something you love, because this is what it looks like to work hard and work in love. I want us to continue to do that, continue to lean into that and be successful. And I want this channel to continue to grow, because I love it, you love it, we love it. And so make sure that you are rewatching this video multiple times, you're sharing it, you're really actually getting engaged in the comments below. And again, there were so many gems that Nick said and shared. Put them down in the comments. What did you hear that really made you say, what do you want to come back to? Let's start that. Let's start capturing the things that we are hearing here, because you need to come back to them and really live them again, and breathe them again. I say live and breathe them, meaning that you take a hold of them and you start acting them out, because you are doing it. You are living and breathing what it means to be successful, what it means to be in your truth, what it means to be an amazing teacher, leader, educator, and someone who is an advocate for all kids.
And having fun doing
and
it.
having fun
That's
doing
such an
it.
important part of it.
Oh
because
my
you're
gosh.
going to do it longer. You're going to do it longer if you have fun doing it.
So you have fun, and don't forget, lean into your twists, because that uniqueness is going to give you that chef kiss experience. See you later.